a few changes that I want to make. So I did some research, like I promised, and I've noticed that, well, since the game's going to be on phone, there is no keyboard, so using keys and pressing with mouse is not an option, which is something we were aware of from the start. But of course, we still have to move with the game somehow. So I decided to change some mechanics slightly. Now, while I was doing that, I also created a scrolling script. So I'm just going to quickly go over it right now, as it's really short, so there is really no need to put too much into it. So this is the entire script. This is how fast we scroll this scene. This is the reference to our renderer. Then we just grab the reference in start. And all we do is we have our little offset value, which is based on time and scrolling speed, and we just set the texture offset. Now, what this requires for the texture is for the texture to be set as a sprite. Um, Furthermore, we have to make sure it's on set on repeat. Now with this, then we have to create a material. So if we go, which I have right here. Now I selected on the texture because there is no light in this scene. It's a 2D game, and I don't really want any light sources, at least not right now. So we don't have any. Anyways, if we move on to the two scripts that we need to work on are player movement and shooting. So first for shooting, it's going to be a very small change. So right now we shoot by pressing the A button. Actually, let's play, and this is what it basically looks like. It just keeps scrolling through the background. So now we either tap or hold the mouse button, but tapping on top of moving will be a lot of mechanics for a mobile game. So what we'll do instead is we will simply remove the need to tap. That means that the actual game will constantly fire, which is okay because mobile games are meant to be more dynamic. So one thing that we'll do is we will set is trigger down to true permanently on our start, and that means that we will constantly shoot as soon as we can. And then the reason why we're going to keep this value is because we still want to pause shooting on the pause key. So there you go. This is the difference. Oh, the speed is really fast uh, currently in the game. And now let's move on to the next section, which is getting rid of our movement script by changing it to something else. So what we essentially will do is we will get rid of move player, as we will no longer use it, and we no longer need to take in any horizontal input. Let's go back. And we no longer need to know our current position. We no longer need the side sticks either for this, but we will keep the speed. So speed is one thing that we will keep, so we can remove everything else besides the speed value. That means that our right and left movement points can completely disappear. It looks a bit off. Let's just get rid of everything. There we go. So let's do a private float speed. Let's set it to a value like 3, and how fast the player moves between the positions. Now let's create an update function. And what we will essentially do is we will use if input.getMouse button, and that's going to be our PC version. So on an Android device, of course, it's going to not be an input.getMouse button. Instead of it's just going to be on screen tap. So we will later replace that code when we're going to do the mobile version with that. What we do need is a vector3, which is going to be the player position. So that's where the player is currently on the screen, like this. And in start, all we will do is we will set our player position. We'll just do this. So we'll do player position. Where are we? Player position is equal to transform.position. And by transform, we are referring to this one. Of course, the this keyword is unnecessary, but I like to put it there as it's easier to read. Anyways, now that we have this, all we have to do is just do player position is equal to camera.main, and then we'll do screen2 world point like this, and we'll put through mouse input dot mouse position. So that will be where we click with our mouse. Now we don't want to modify the Z because it's a 2D game, so we'll do .z, and that's just going to stay the same as our current one. So we'll do this .transform.position.z because we're keeping the same z value. And now that we have this, we can do this .transform.position is equal to vector3.move towards, and we're going to move, of course, this .transform.position to our actual player position that we want it to be, and we will do this over speed.times.delta time. Maybe we will straight away teleport it later, but if we teleport it, then we can kind of like really easily avoid bullets. But if we drag it, then that's a more efficient way of moving the player, and also we can have faster and slower ships in the future as a possibility. So moves the player based on mouse clicks. So let's give this script a try, see how it works. It should work. It makes no sense for it not to. There you go. So now we have movement. We might try some different methods to maybe make it smoother in the future, but I think for now it's good. So we can either hold the mouse button or keep clicking. It doesn't matter, whichever way we do it. For a mobile game, it's just going to be a case of tapping it on the screen. So with this, we have the first section of what we wanted to do done, which is the conversion. And what was the title of this? Oh, I didn't save the title. This should have been 5. For some reason, the stream info didn't update. So the second thing we want to do is we want our enemies to fire back at the player. Now, one thing that we do need to do is we are going to adjust everything so it scales with our mobile size, but that's for later, because we don't want enemies spawning outside of the screen. Where are we? So what we're going to do now is we're going to add the ability to shoot to the enemies. So let's open up our shooting script. And let's see how is that going to be different from what enemies have. Let's have a look. I think we can actually keep it the same way, although the enemy's script is going to be slightly different in terms of how it's executed. Or to be precise, I believe this section will be different for the enemy. So let's create a private void, and let's call this, no, let's think. This entire section has to be different for the enemy. So let's cut this entire thing out, and let's just call it private void fire and paste this in. And now let's create a new class which will inherit from this class, and that's going to be our enemy fire. So let's call this enemy fire. I feel like later on we'll have to greatly expand on all of these based on different types of bullets that we use, etc., etc. But for now, that's good enough. This is a very short class, so rewriting it won't make much of a choice. I mean, much of a difference. Player shooting. So now that we have this, let's add fire at the top, like this, and make this a virtual function, like this. Now, that also means that we have to make it public, like so. and that's all good. And what we're going to do here is we will just do public, and we're going to create this. Now we will not use the base, because what we need to do is we need to slightly alter how this function works. Or actually, let's have a look. Okay, so let's just copy this down here for now. And let's create a private float fire chance to fire. And let's just set this as something like 0. Let's just say it is 22. Right, so this is the odds of the enemy shooting a bullet. So this basically checks whenever we can shoot the bullet. Now we have a lot of red errors here. That's because even though we inherit, they're not accessible. So what we would need to do is for each values that we kind of want to use, we would need to separate everything into bits. Now, I think that there is no need to play around with it so much. There is a way to make it simpler, because what we really want to only do is shorten this if statement here. So we get, but and then everything else here. Let's just keep doing what we're doing, and then later on we'll figure out what needs to be set as a public value to make the best structural sense. So what we're going to do is if is triggered down and is ready to fire. So what we're going to do prior to that is we will just do float a random chance, and then we're going to make that equal to random dot. So actually, no, we'll just do inside of this value. So if we are ready to fire, everything's fine. We will then draw a random number between 0 and 100. And then if our random chance is going to be smaller than or equal to, then we can proceed with all of this code here. However, at any under any other circumstances, we will have to perform, we'll basically just do this instead. Yeah, so let's have a look. All of this content can be moved out into another function. So that means we can avoid using these guys. So here we have fire. We'll just create private void spawn bullet like this. And inside of spawn bullet, we will paste all of these guys. And we'll do spawn bullet in here. And we'll make this a virtual function as well, like this. So we fire, we spawn the bullet. So this it checks whenever we can fire another bullet, spawns a new bullet. So we do this, and this can be just replaced for spawn bullet like this. No need to override it because we're just going to use the base function. We will change that later though, when we're going to have different types of bullets within the project. And those are the remaining values that we do actually need to change. I mean, make accessible. So this trigger will be set. But we don't set it, we only get them. Is ready to fire. And finally, where are we? So this trigger is ready to fire. Oh, it actually has to be a set. So let's remove this and leave the setting in. And then finally we want to do elapsed since firing, and that's also going to be a getter only. Nope, it has to be a setter and a getter. And I completely deleted it. Let's give this a try. And just change that to a capital E. And with this, we have a firing for our enemy set up, hopefully. So now let's grab every single temporary enemy that we have. And let's just give them enemy fire script. Now, of course, just like with the player, we do need the way for them to pull the bullets. We'll definitely have some issues with pulling because different enemies will have different bullets that need to be pulled, etc., etc. So that's something that we do need to work on soon. So for now, let's just create a new bullet for our enemy. It doesn't have to be anything great. So let's just make a copy of our current bullet and just grab the enemy bullet instead, just to get the, actually let's unpack the prefab so we don't make any mistakes and change the name from bullet to enemy, bullet enemy. So we know it's our enemy's bullet. There we go. Let's have a look at it. And let's have a look at the script of our bullet. So right now, there is no distinction for the bullets between which bullet is for the enemy, which one is for our ally. But all we really have to do is just create another one of these and make it only collide with the player. We could actually also use the 2D matrices as well. That's also an option. But I think we're just going to leave it like how it is now and just create enemy bullet for now. I don't want to play around with the physics because there is no clear idea of what we're planning on doing with the game. So we want to inherit from forward movement. And we just want to do this. Of course, map edge will still be there. And we change this to a player instead. Now, right now, player doesn't have a way to take damage. So we will just do a debug.log. A player was hit. Can completely remove this section here. And now we can drag this into our prefabs because the bullet is now completely done. There we go. Now in the pulled, we want to replace this bullet with the enemy bullet. And for each enemy, we want to assign the new pull. So let's just call it enemy. Select every enemy, scroll lower and select like this. Now that also means that enemies need to have a pull muzzle. Now that I think about it, I'm just better off them removing all of the enemies that we have. Like this. Now, another thing that I kind of need to add for the enemies is, so where are we? So player shooting, so let's have a look at it. Actually, no, it should be fine. It doesn't matter. Where are we? So now let's make up the muzzle. So let's create a empty game object and let's assign it a square and stretch it out forward. Let's call this a muzzle. And now that we have the muzzle, let's drag in the muzzle in and press play and see if we're gonna get some spawns. Of course, the player just murders our enemy straight away. Let's just spawn 2 of them, press play, and see how it works. The biggest problem is, so we do keep getting the refreshes. Oh, so they shot, but they ended up murdering themselves with their own bullet. I believe I didn't change the bullet script on our bullet, so let's put enemy bullet here. And now that should be better. I also be going to change the speed on them so they're not as fast. Give this a try now. Also, there you go, 1 fires. Second one fires. Second one fires again. And they'll just keep shooting like this eventually. So yeah, now we have the enemies that shoot. They can't kill the player just yet, but they do everything we want them to do, which is great. Um, while we have some time, I think we can also, yeah, I actually still have some time. So let's go into scripts and let's create a new folder and let's call this UI. Now in the UI, I'll put the main menu and I'll also create a new one called pause. And there's some areas of the code that have to be changed because of a pause menu. So let's first create a canvas for our project. So let's go into UI and let's create just a canvas with a panel. Now let's call this the panel pause. And let's just modify the canvas so it scales with screen size. Now, what we do want to do is just have this little box. Where are we? So if that's our entire canvas, we kind of just want to have it like this. Sure, that's good enough for now. And we're just going to drag it lower. And let's just add some buttons. Now, for the button usage, we will use a text mesh brush. We are not going to use normal one because it gives you better visuals of the buttons. So let's just put something like resume for now and then quit. There is no need to put too much effort for this for now. We just kind of want to make sure we pause the game in terms of code, not rather than what we can have in the middle. And besides that, canvas game scene. Besides this, we also want to have another button, but this is going to be outside of our panel, and this doesn't need a text component. This is just a empty button. Later on, we'll have an icon in this place, and this is what we tap to pause the game. Maybe something like this. The button looks really small, the ones in here. So let's just help them out a little bit. Yeah, too big. Okay. There we go. Just gonna leave it as this for now. So one's gonna say resume. This one's gonna say quit. And now that we have this, we can let's create a empty game object and let's call this the level manager. This is where all of our management scripts will be taking place. So let's add our pause menu here and let's edit it. Now in pause menu, this is where we're going to control the time. So that means that it's ideal if this is a static instance. It hasn't, well, so we have an instance of this class. So let's just do public static pause menu and let's call this instance. And in the awake function, let's just do instance is equal to this, like so. Now here we'll also have a boolean, so we'll have private, well, yeah, private boolean is pause, and by default it's going to be false. And then we will have an update function which will do basically if is post, then we want timescale to be a 0, and else we want timescale to be 1, like this. Now public void pause game button on pause selected. So this will be the little button in the corner here, which we can set up straight away now. So if we click on this button, and I do like how that was weird. So let's call this button pause. click here to add a script and then drag in our level manager script. Now, one thing I kind of want to do is just create a bunch of empty game objects. And let's call this management. And I kind of just want to drag this in, and then under the management, I'm just going to grab these. And what else do we have? What's a bound? Oh, let's create another empty, reset it, and just call it level visual. No, to level. Yeah, let's just call it level. And under level, we want to put stuff like the player, the camera, basically everything else can stay on the level for now. The event system is going to go into the management field. Actually, we can put camera in here as well. And then I'm actually going to duplicate this and call the other one UI. And just drag in our canvas. So it's just easier this way to see things. Okay. Better. So with this done, wait, did we select it? No, we didn't. So here we'll do on pressed selected like this. And what will happen on pressed selected is we will do, well, we'll essentially just call this in here. And with this, we also have to trigger is paused to the alternative state. So if we click that one, it's paused, it's going to be false. And then here is paused, is going to be true. What? No. I'm wrong. Where are we? Rather than doing this an update, because that means it's going to constantly check, we'll do this. So if we're already paused, which we shouldn't be by default, wait, if we are not paused, then we do pause, and then is pause is set to true. And then if we set it, then is pause is equal to false, like this. Yeah, so we'll just use this button. So pauses or unpauses the game when the button is selected. Now, we won't bother making any code for the quit for now. And also, we do have that UI area that we need to enable when this happens. So let's make a serializable field, private transform. Actually, just make it a game object, and we'll call this the pause panel. Just going to press type in node so we don't get the error. One thing that we'll do is always in start, we will set pause panel. We can actually get rid of these guys. Dot set active false, like this. So we can remove the pause. And what we will do is here we will set it to true. And here we will set it to false. Another thing that we do have to do is this has to be a value that we can get in other scripts. I'll show in a second why. So now let's go into our level manager, and now let's select our panel pause, drag it in, press play. Now the game plays, we click here, the game stops, we click here again on it on restarts. Now one thing that we have in a slight problem is that we have to cancel, this has to be cancelled on a raycast click. So, where's the script for cancelling it? So if we go into player shooting, we basically just need to do a quick check in, where are we? Player movement, I mean, we need to basically cancel this, what was the code? There we go. If event systems not current is better. I think it would be like, was it like this? Wait, let's give this a try. Oh, wait, what? Did I do the wrong way around? Dun, 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 dun. I might be wrong with this line. So we can move. I click. Okay. So yeah, that's fine. So there you go. This is just line of code which handles this logic here. Anyways, what are we doing now? So we did this. Let's add the resume. So it does the exact same thing as our pausing. Where are we? And just do on pause selected. And of course, like I said, there's issues right now with pausing, and I'll show you what these issues are. So let's fire, and let's just wait a little bit. So what I presumed is, where are we? The invoking on play, where are we? Let's have a look at this script. So my biggest concern right now is that oh, that the invoke will destroy the object if we pause, but I don't think that's the problem, which means we are actually problemless. Let's just pause it for a while, give it a few seconds. And if it works, it works. Nope, it's all good. Okay, that's great. That means that we've done everything we wanted for this part, which is great. So that'll be it for now. I don't have any more time to do it today, but there should be one tomorrow. I'll try to think about what else we need for the mobile section of the project. But I feel like this is pretty good. We can slowly start moving to the mobile side. Well, we can start moving to stuff like waves, different types of waves, enemy movement, making sure everything fits on screen at all time, and which has actually been just fixed with, well, at least for the player, because there is no way for us to tap outside of the screen. Oh, there is actually. Interesting. Although I reckon once we build, that shouldn't be an issue. Then again, we can also introduce bounds so player can't go out of the screen. So maybe we should work on adding that as well to further the mechanic. Different types of bullets, definitely, and of course customizations in the menus, which is going to be a very important option. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.